Hello everyone and welcome back to part 2 of the Beginners Flamingo Embroidery series. My name is Sarah and I'll be guiding you step by step over the course of 6 videos in total through each stitch so you can create this lovely flamingo design. In the last video we started our project by learning chain stitch and detached chain. So if you haven't watched that yet, I recommend starting there first and I'll link that down in the description box below. Today we're moving on to 2 really fun and decorative stitches. They're very similar, whipped and woven wheels. These stitches are going to add more texture to the design and they're a lovely way to add a little bit more dimension to your embroidery. As always, you can find the full design along with the colour plan and the stitch plan over on my website. Just sign up and you'll be able to download everything you need to follow along. And again, I'll link that down below in the description box. I'm using the same materials as before, so I'm working on a slate frame, but you guys can use a 10-inch hoop. We're using a medium weight fabric like a cotton or a densely woven linen, and then easy to source thread. So I've used DMC stranded cotton, but feel free to get creative and swap anything out that you want to, change the colours and to make it your own. Okie doke, let's get started and we'll have a little look at whipped and woven wheels. So just a quick recap. In our last video, we looked at chain stitch, filling these 2 areas and down the legs. And we looked at detached chain in these 2 areas. Now for this video, we're going to look at whipped wheels in here and here. And we're also going to look at woven wheels in here and here. So we're going to start off with our whipped wheel and we're going to work in this little circle here using 2 strands of the 470 stranded cotton. And I'm using my number 7 embroidery needle for this. So a whipped wheel has typically an even number of bars. I'm going to bring the needle up at the top of my circle, just outside of the design line, and I'm going to take it down, again, just outside my design line. This is a relatively small whipped wheel, so I'm going to divide it into 6 sections. So I'm going to come up about a third. So if you're working a bigger circle, you might want 8 sections. And the reason why we go outside the design line with these stitches is so that we end up covering our circle design line. And then we can put a little holding stitch in one of the sections, nice and close. It doesn't matter which section. And then I'm going to go down in the opposite section to hold everything in place there like that. So now I'm starting off my new colour and I'm using 2 strands of the 602. And I'm in my embroidery needle for just the starting off section. And then I'm going to swap over to my tapestry needle to actually work the stitch. So I'm going to bring the needle up in the middle or in a section close to the centre of my green stitches. So I'm as close to one of the sections as I can get. And now I'm going to swap over to my tapestry needle and I'm going to start working the stitch. Now I'm going to work anti-clockwise. So I'm going to go around in that direction there like that. And I'm going to start by going over the bar to the right hand side of where I've just brought the needle up. And I'm going to come underneath that same bar and underneath the next one. Pull that needle through and I'm going to tighten this thread around that first bar. I've just come underneath this central bar here, so I'm going to go over it and under it again. Needle is travelling from right to left. I'm going to go underneath that one and underneath the next one along. So it's like 1 step back, 2 steps forwards. You can see I use my needle to tension there, so it sits close to the central point. Back underneath the one I've just been under, which creates the whipping, and then underneath the next one. Now the reason why we use a tapestry needle is so that we don't get caught on the bars, and I'm always holding the thread here in towards the centre so it doesn't get in the way. So back underneath that same bar and underneath the next one. And again, I'm going to tension my thread and then go round back underneath the one I've just been under and then underneath the next one. And then when I reach the beginning, I'm just going to keep going round and round and round. Notice as well, tension wise, I'm not pulling really tight on these. So I'm not pulling tight like that and distorting the bars. I'm trying to keep an even tension. And I'm also not tensioning it too little because then you end up with loops. Just use my needle to help lay everything nicely. And then underneath the next two. And obviously as you get closer to the edges, it gets a little bit harder to take your needle through. But you want to keep going until all your bars and your design lines are covered up, which is always more times round than you think it is. And as you start getting closer to the edge, you might find it's trickier to take needle under both at the same time. So you can just do one at a time. Might find that a little bit easier to control at the edges and get it so that everything's laying as you want it to. Still see a little bit of green on this one, these bottom three here. And then to finish off the thread, once you're happy with your circle and that it's complete, all you do is take the needle back down over the end of the bar like that. And I'm just angling the needle a little bit underneath. And then I can do my couple of finishing stitches, probably on this line here or on this line here, just to finish off that thread. And that is a whipped wheel. So we're now going to look at a woven wheel, and for a woven wheel we need an odd number of spokes. Now I've started off 2 strands of the 470 as I did with that one, so we'll have a little green center in there. And to make an odd number of spokes, I'm going to bring my needle up just to the side here, and again slightly outside the design line, but I'm not bringing it up at the central point here. Okay, I'm bringing it up just to the side. I'm going to take another one down on the opposite side, again just outside my design line, create a little loop, then bring my needle up in the middle of that circle and through the loop. We'll pull down from underneath and then up from the top, and then we're going to take a stitch down straight over the outside, and that creates a little Y shape. Then I'm going to fill in these 2 larger sections and divide them up so they're the same size as our previous section. Again, if you had a larger circle, you might want to divide it up into more sections, but 5 sections for a circle this size is about right. And we have to, with a woven circle, have an odd number of sections. The weaving doesn't work if it's an even number. Now I want a little bit of a green center in the middle here. So I'm going to bring my needle up in one of my little sections, swap over to my tapestry needle. And again, that could be brought up in any of the sections, it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to do a couple of goes round with this green thread so we can see a little bit more of it in the center, because with this stitch, I find that you don't actually see much of it if I just leave it as it is. And with this stitch, it doesn't matter if you work clockwise or anti-clockwise, whatever you feel is easiest. And we're literally just going to go over, under, over, under. So I've come up in the middle here, so I'm going to work anti-clockwise. I'll go over this bar here, underneath this bar here. Again, I'm trying not to catch the thread of the bar. And then I'm going to go over this one here and under that one there. Over this one here, under this one here. I'm literally just going round and round, over and under. And because we've got the odd number of bars, the one that I've just gone under here, I'll now go over. So that's an over, and this is an under. Over, under. And now I'm back at the start. I want to change my thread because I've been round twice, so that gives me a little green centre. So I'm going to change my thread by going over this one here and under this one here, and I'm just going to angle my needle underneath here like this. And now I'm going to come in with the 2 strands of the 602, so same colours as we did on our whipped wheel, and I angled my needle to finish off underneath this bar here on this side. So now I'm going to angle my needle out from underneath on the opposite side with my new thread. So what it looks like I've done is I've gone underneath that bar, but what I've actually done is I've taken the needle through the fabric on either side. Swap over to my tapestry needle, and then we'll carry on going over, under, and we're just going to keep going round and round and round. Tension wise, we're pulling reasonably tight because we want this to all squish into the middle. You could absolutely shade through these. I'm not talking really about shading in this design because it is aimed at beginners. A lot of my students know how much I talk about shading, so that's an option if you wanted to. And again, we're going to keep going round until we have covered our design line and all of our spokes. So you can see it lifting up quite nicely in the middle. When I start getting to the edge, that's when I stop pulling quite as tight because I don't want these threads now to slip underneath. I want them to sort of still sit so that they're visible. It's okay to pull them tight to begin with, but once you get to the end stages, you want to pull them as tight. If your spokes are inconsistent in length, then you might find at this stage that you've got one which is poking out a little bit more than the others. Just keep going around for as long as you can with all of them. Then what you can do, if you have got one that's quite a bit longer than the others, you could just weave over that one by itself. But I think I'm okay. This is going to be my last one here because this stitch that I put in now will cover up that little green bit. And then I'm just going to angle the needle underneath that bar there like that. And now I can finish off my thread on the design line over here. And that is our whipped and woven wheel. And I'm going to repeat that in the 2 other circles. So just to recap everything we've done so far, we did our whipped wheels, we've done our woven wheels, and then in our last video we did our detached chain and our chain stitch. And that's it for our whipped and woven wheels in today's video. These stitches are a good practice in maintaining consistent tension with your threads. But once you get into a rhythm, they are actually really enjoyable to do and they add a lovely texture to your work. So take your time adding these into your flamingo design and don't worry if they're not perfectly even to begin with. A little bit of practice always helps, and remember to just enjoy the process. It's supposed to be lots of fun. In the next video, we'll be learning open and closed fly stitch and continuing obviously to build up the design. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you haven't already, don't forget to download the design and stitch plan from my website. Again, I'll link that down below. It's obviously very helpful to help you stay on track as we go through the series and obviously transferring your design. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you gave it a like and feel free to share your progress. Just tag me on Instagram over at @Embroidered. I always love seeing what you guys are creating and how you're adapting my designs. Thanks so much for stitching with me, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll be looking at open and closed fly. Bye.